What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the Black and Gold, the unofficial home of your now 6-6-1 Boston Bruins. This is HiBruiNation.
Woo!
I am joined, as always, by Matt down in Studio V. Dude, what's going on?
A lot of mixed emotions this week. Started off pretty rough, but after this past two games, we're just coming off the Seattle game on Sunday night, the Philly game Saturday afternoon for another matinee game. I think that kind of turned around all of the not all of the negativity, but kind of boosted the vibes a little bit from the beginning of the week, where I think everybody, all Bruins fans, the entire team, everybody was down and out. But I think we got some new life, so I got some new life in me.
Dude, what the actual F was the first two games this past week?
That was tough. It was tough. It was
The
bad hockey.
The Flyers I'll take because they fought hard and they blocked a lot of shots. They did a lot of right things, and the Bruins just could not capitalize. I'll take the Flyers loss, I guess, with a grain of salt.
You will? I mean, that
I,
was.
I wasn't happy with the play, but I mean I'd take it, right? Like look at it though. Look at the Flyers. They did a lot of things right. Okay, should we acknowledge that they had a ton of block shots? They were playing the John Tortorella hockey, and I think was it Urson? Urson was in game one, and then I believe in the second game Urson also started, but then he was pulled for Kolosov due to some undisclosed injury. But that first game, I mean, he was lights out. There was not getting anything past him. I mean, I thought the Bruins were still sloppy in that game, but I mean, a ton of credit to the Philadelphia Flyers. They put on a clinic of penalty killing, and they did a lot. But I don't know. I'll take what I can get out of that, I suppose.
My thought was, coming off that win in Toronto. I mean, I'm sorry, against Toronto, the game before, the Saturday before that, Philly's just trash. They're just a bad team, and you can't play a game like that against a team like that. I mean, that should be not a guaranteed 2 points, but you got to assume that there's a pretty good chance that you can go into that and sneak away with 2 points. You had to keep the vibes high. They were not. They were not. They start to finish. I thought it was bad hockey. I think the one bright side, the one positive you can take away from that is I thought Korpisalo looked awesome with a sloppy team in front of him.
Korpisalo played the second game, not the first game. Swayman played the first game.
No.
I thought Swayman was in the first game, wasn't he not?
No.
Oh.
Korpisalo had both Philly games and part of the Carolina game.
All the days are blending in together. Yeah, I mean, yeah, you're right. I guess Korpisalo had a stellar week. You know what I mean? He played well. Swayman, on the other hand, had one bad game and one good game. But going back to the Flyers game, I agree with you. It was bad hockey on Boston's end. They couldn't finish. I think that was their biggest problem. And we talked about it, the discipline and some of the turnovers, and a couple of those things. But I mean, if you just look at it, Philly, I'm going to give a lot of credit to Philly there. Boston did lose the game, but Philly played a very good game against Boston.
The block shots were unbelievable. I mean, they had more block shots than we had shots on goal. I mean, they had what, 30, if maybe a couple less. It was unbelievable.
Yeah, I mean, and that's where I give them a ton of credit because if some of those get through, their high danger rebounds. Maybe one sneaks past Urson, and I mean, a lot of that team did a lot to help their goalie out, and we didn't do enough, especially on Thursday night's game where we did nothing to help Swayman or Korpisalo. And I mean, we had us winning both Philadelphia games, but I think you and I both had us losing the Carolina games in our prediction. I anticipated the Carolina game being a loss. I didn't anticipate it being whatever the ever living hell that was. That not to call it a mess would be an understatement. And Montgomery did what Montgomery does, and after the Flyers game, he put things into a blender and he just said, "Let's cause some chaos." And in his words, he basically said, I'm putting players that have been performing with players that haven't been in the hopes that their habits would rub off on them. But then that takes away from what's working. And it drove me nuts. And you saw the result on Thursday.
Yeah, that was. I appreciate you trying to give me credit for saying that was going to be a loss. I'm pretty sure if you go back and listen, I'm pretty sure I called it a sweep. I'm pretty sure I called this whole week a sweep, which
Oh,
was very wrong. But yeah, that again, talk another just bad hockey, bad hockey. You'll. It was tough to watch. It was tough to watch the whole thing.
I couldn't find a single point. Like there were some points in the Flyers game, right, where I could say, okay, it was a good chance, or there were some opportunities there that were just blocked. Urson stood on his head. The Bruins had some good opportunities, but the Flyers came out stronger. They came out better. I was looking for something in the Carolina game to give me some inclination that the Bruins had any chance of belonging in that game. I mean, you know what? They tied it. Um, I think, yeah, they tied it in the first at 1-1, but then Carolina took off. I think after it was Rob Brindamore took that, bench minor for unsportsmanlike conduct, and it must have gotten received by the players that, okay, fine, it was a questionable call on Chad Hatfield, and Brindamore made it known, and so I guess that kind of gave the players a boost, and what a boost it was. And then, in the second period, Lindholm rockets one past Peter Kochetkov. And you think the Bruins have some life in you, and then the game just got away from there. It was really hard to find something that was good out of that Carolina game.
I felt good going into it, especially I mean, that Tuesday game was again another tough loss, and I keep saying it, but going into Carolina, Anderson's not playing. You're coming off a bad loss. Maybe that lights a fire under your ass. I felt good going into it, but obviously, like you said, the floodgates opened, and then after a certain point, there was no turning back, and it was just an absolute shitstorm.
We talk about Freddie Anderson as if he's the only answer down in Carolina, but that kid in Kochetkov he's really good. I mean, some of the saves he did have to make some pretty stellar saves in that game, and I mean he stood very big, and you need that out of your backup goaltender. But I think once Anderson's done, I mean that's your guy, and I think he's earned it thus far.
Do you know how much longer Anderson's down there?
I think 2 years
Is that what it is?
or a year. I'm not 100% positive on that, but I know it's not that much longer. But suffice it to say, even without him, you're going to get Kochetkov, and he's pretty solid, I think.
Yeah,
And
the
especially,
Hurricanes have kind of had the Bruins number for a little bit now, and it's again, I didn't expect them to go in and blow the doors off Carolina. I just expected them to put up more of a fight.
I'm gonna correct myself. So, Frederick Anderson this is his last year, and he's only making $3.4 million.
Okay.
Um, so and they have Peter Kochetkov for 2 more years after this year. And he's only making $2 million, so that's going to add some flexibility for them, down the line. I think just a smidge,
Mhm.
especially with some of the contracts that they have expiring now. Um, yeah, like you said about when you had some hope that the Bruins were going to go in there with the fire under their ass, like they were 4-5-1 going into that game, and you would have thought that going down into Raleigh and doing something would have had to give, right? Um, I don't know, something inside of me just always said that that wasn't going to be a strong game by them.
Well, like we said too, Carolina's had the Bruins number. It's always a tough game. It's never easy playing them, whether it's here or
Mhm.
there. But I don't know. I just figure, the Toronto game on Saturday, that was a big win for the Bruins, and then obviously playing like garbage against Philly, and then taking a loss to a team that you should beat. I thought that they would bring a little more life to that game, but it was tough. It was tough to watch.
I mean, the good news out of this week, right? So now they're now 6-6-1, right after the win from Seattle tonight. But I mean, before that, before the Seattle win and the win against Philly yesterday, th- out of their 4 wins, 2 of them came in overtime.
Mhm.
And that was a difficult pill to swallow, especially, like we mentioned after the Toronto game. You can't leave a guy like Austin Matthews like that wide open in front of that, because he's gonna hurt you. That's where he's gonna hurt you. A talented scorer like that is gonna hurt you. And I feel like, it was the same thing when Philly scored their first goal on, I believe it was Tuesday. And you had that sense of feeling that they just didn't pick. I can't remember who scored the goal, but they just didn't pick the guy up, and it ended up in the back of the net.
That's
Um,
happened a lot. I mean, that's a pretty common theme so far this year.
mhm. Yeah,
Leaving guys open, backdoor, high in the slot. A lot of them, if you go back and watch some of the games, especially the bad games, the Bruins get caught a lot in their own defensive end with, 3, 4, sometimes 5 guys just watching the puck.
yeah, it's a passive system, and it's that's what's kind of bugged me, because if you watch some of those high flying offenses, or look at an example like Carolina, they move quick, they don't slow down, like they're not a set up and we can maintain it. We're gonna move this puck and zip it around as quickly as we can. We're gonna get you to move, and then we're gonna bury it past your goaltender, or whoever's playing. And the same thing with the Florida Panthers. The Bruins played way too passively to start the season in their own end. You have to respect the other players. And I feel like we finally got that out of the Philadelphia game. On Saturday, the second game against them. And then we got it, against the Kraken. We got it especially against the Kraken, especially in now that the Kraken have Brandon Montour, and Montour used to kill us, like absolutely kill us.
Mhm.
When he was in Florida. So to kind of see them finally like attack, the defenders attack the Kraken offensemen, and getting their bodies into the shooting lanes, the passing lanes, and getting their sticks in the right areas. I mean, that was finally good to see. The latter half of this week, was ideal hockey to me. The Flyers win was not perfect, but it was a lot better. I felt a lot better after that.
Yeah, I mean, the Saturday game against the Flyers, it was a completely different team. It was a team that showed up and wanted to play and wanted to win and prove. I don't know if it was to themselves or to the fan or to the league that the team that they have been playing like isn't their identity. That's what I keep talking about when we bring up all these games, and I keep saying they got to start playing Bruins hockey. The past 2 games, the Seattle game and the Philly game yesterday, are prime examples of that.
Yeah, yeah, they emphasize size, right? In the offseason. They got size. They got Nikita Zadorov. They got Elias Lindholm. Now, Elias Lindholm, maybe not the biggest guy in the world, but still a respectable size two-way forward who plays a moderately physical game. And very similar and comparable, probably more so to Brad Marchand, I would say in that regard. Not so much Bergeron, because he was a little bit more passive and played more with his stick as opposed to his body. But you started to see that, against Philadelphia, where they started to use their bodies more, protect the puck. I mean, you saw Marchand do it all year, but like especially Marchand, who became a little bit more noticeable, over the last few games, actually probably since Carolina. I would say even despite that loss, Marchand was a notable player on the ice, trying to do something. His name was mentioned a lot. He was in the corners. He was doing things, and I feel like that also sparked it a bit.
Yeah, I it was that's the kind of stuff I'm talking about when I say Boston has to play Boston hockey.
Yeah.
Prime example, 2 prime examples, and even the games today and yesterday, you can still improve on stuff. You can't get comfortable. You can't take these 2 big wins, go into next week, which again is another big week, gonna be tough games, and
Yep.
and take it easy.
No, every game.
You
Well,
have to keep your foot on the gas.
especially with how tight the Atlantic is right now. I think
Yes.
it's not it's not like any team is really running away with it. I mean, Florida's playing well. A lot of teams are kind of playing well, but again, the points are very tight. So you could easily fall out of the playoffs by going on a 2-game, 3-game losing streak. and not being able to pick it up. So like you can't have many of those losing streaks.
No,
You
we
got
were
to
last going
win.
into this weekend. We were last in the division, and now we're sitting in 4th because of 2 games.
Yeah.
I mean,
That.
every game matters.
Yep. And it's, again, it is one of those. I mean, I'm glad it is that, because I like when the parity of the league increases. I like all this. I like good competition. I think it's very healthy. But also at the other side of that, it's very frustrating if you're a Bruins fan, or if you're a hockey fan of the team, or what have you, or a fan of your hockey team. Sorry, and you're just like, damn it, the points are so tight. These guys are really good, but we can't string together 2 wins. But the other team above us can. So like that's why they're ahead of us. And it's not to say that the other teams are that bad, right? It's just, it's when they can string together wins at the appropriate times.
I'm hoping the past week or two, the games they've played poorly, I hope that's just getting it out of the way early, because you have stretch teams that have been on hot streaks so far to start the year, and it's not going to be like that all year. They're going to go through down games too. So I'm hoping this is just get it out of the way now, figure out where the holes are in your game, figure out all the bugs. Montgomery's never going to stop shaking up the line. So
But he did the past 2 days. He stopped. The forward core did not change. The only insertions or in people that were sat out, they swapped between Peak, Lowry, and Wotherspoon. The rest of the team remained relatively constant. I'm going to exclude the goalies from that, because you're going to expect your goalie to
that's going to
swap
be
everything
rotating
in.
anyway. But can you
Yeah.
seriously sit there and say that just because the past 2 games that Montgomery won't Montgomery this lineup and just makes changes he doesn't need to?
I think the players are now making it difficult for him to do so. Over the last 2 games, Brazeau picked it up. Geeky still needs to do some things, but he's been streaky. That's been seen as of last year. He had a rough start to the season last year, but then he picked it up as the season went on. I mean, I'm hoping to see that out of him as it goes. So I still have a lot of faith in Geeky. If not, Sweeney and I believe Kyle Dubas were observing the Columbus Blue Jackets game against the Winnipeg Jets this week. So maybe they were looking to shake up their lineups a bit, because as you know, Pittsburgh's not doing that well. And so maybe that sent a message to the Bruins locker room, just being like, hey, we're exploring options for a few of you. And I bet you they're just exploring options for Max Jones.
I think Jones and
Yeah.
Geeky. I think if you were to take any guys out of this lineup, put them in the hot seat, I think those are probably your top 2.
Yeah, you can't move Hampus Lindholm. He's got an NMC. You can't move any of those defensemen making money, because they all have NMCs, if to my belief. So you're stuck with Geeks or Jones, and I mean Jones
Hasn't impressed me. Geeky
nope.
has shown, and maybe I'm just thinking about
He's
last year.
tried, but he's not.
You've seen him
Producing.
play better than he is now, so
Yep.
maybe that's just giving me a little bit of hope. I haven't seen anything from Max Jones that has impressed me.
I've seen him in the box,
Yeah,
but that's
you've
about
seen
it.
everybody in the box.
That's fair. Nikita
Another
Zadorov, for
thing,
the most part.
that's kind of a little bit been cleaned up the past 2 games. So another bright side to this week.
Yeah, not in the Carolina game. That was bad.
Yeah,
The Carolina game was bad, but I think that's just something too, that the league itself, they're calling a lot of stuff. A lot of things are being called right now, and you're going to notice that across the games. Like, yes, Boston is the most penalized team, but they're also getting the most calls for. So they're last in one aspect, but first in the other. So it just goes to show you that it's a league wide thing.
Yeah.
I think, with the amount of penalties, and maybe it's not so much the discipline on the players. Not this isn't discipline, but do we have any idea in the NHL what possession is versus what also goaltender interference is? Because I thought in the Carolina game, where Elias Lindholm screened Peter Kochetkov, I thought that goal was going to count. I didn't think there was remotely enough contact there to say there was goaltender interference.
It doesn't matter. It's whatever the ref wants to call that night. You get goalie interference on that when the goal gets called back. You have Matthew Tkachuk assaulting. I forget. Was it the
Varlamov.
Islanders? Yeah,
Yeah, it was Varlamov. Yeah.
just absolutely assaulting him, and they just look the other way. And no one has any idea, and everyone has questions. It's never going to get answered.
Just speaking to that real quick, because that really bothered me, because it goes back to when, I'm going to use this as a prime example with Coyle and Bennett, like when that cross-checking thing in the playoffs, you got to make the call or on something like that. It's just an example. I mean, that's just something that is going to live rent-free in my head, just because that was that egregious. I mean, the better team
And
still won that
what
series.
happened because of it?
Yeah, the better team still won that series. Don't get me wrong. Florida, the better team won. I'm not gonna
Yeah,
knock
but
Florida
the
for that.
different series that
That could
changed
have been
the
a
game.
different series. That could have sent it down to.
I'm
But
not saying it was
yeah,
guaranteed win for the Bruins, but
yeah. It could have been the
again,
difference of between a tied series or a 3-1 series. You're right, but I still think Florida was gonna go and win that series
yeah.
regardless. But then you look at Matt Tkachuk, who slashed him, punched him, cross-checked him, and then after the goal, gave him 2 bops to the head. And I'm just like, you got to call something, even if you're not going to call the goal back. You got to give him 2 minutes, or someone on the Islanders. And so I was watching NHL Network, and one of the analysts brought up, he just goes, "What's more surprising is no one on the Islanders stepped up to defend Varlamov." I'm like, I think what's even more surprising isn't the fact that no one stepped up, is just that the referees just turned a blind eye.
It was on that specifically because goalie interference we've talked about it here. We've talked about it on the Pucking Around podcast. Ladies and gentlemen, go look at the Don't Puck with Media YouTube channel, as well as our streaming platforms. Spotify, Apple, for all of Don't Puck with Media's podcasts, including the Pucking Around podcast. Me and Cam are on there. We'll cover the entire league. But one of the things that we've covered is goalie interference. That's just like we're talking about now. It's so inconsistent. No one knows what it is, and like you said, we're not going to get an answer because it's a judgment call every single time.
Yeah, and like I said, still just going back to it, Carolina was the better team on Thursday. That would not have changed the pace of the game, but what it does do is that you basically you put a lot of questioning in the players' minds, where you're just like, well, what can I do? Because
Yeah.
you're telling me how I need to adjust my play, how I need to play the game so that I don't get called. You're telling me, like, it's kind of like inadvertently telling them how the game is gonna be called. And so in a way, you're coaching the players, right? That's the way I look at refereeing. Each pair of refs is going to be different. There is human error. I'm totally fine with that. I'm a big believer in that, and that's fine. But I just think it doesn't have to be consistency from game to game, but in the game. But I think in terms when you challenge a play, you have to get it right. I'm not going to say whether or not they were right or wrong. That was a judgment call, but it's gonna just come down to, when you challenge it, just make sure you get it right. I'm surprised that didn't count, but what are you gonna do? You can only
You
bitch
also,
so
in
much.
addition to that, you brought up possession. Do you want to bring that up now, or you want to wait till we get into the Seattle game? Because I know I
Well, let's
have
wait
a
till we get
pretty
to.
strong feeling on what that's about.
Yeah, let's because I was listening to that too, and they explained it thereafter, and I ended up agreeing with the call. But so guys, we spoke about the Flyers loss, the 1-0 loss. We spoke about the 8-2 loss to Carolina. There really wasn't much to discuss about those games outside of, like, it was just really bad hockey, and it wasn't just the Bruins shooting themselves in the foot. It was the Bruins not showing up to play, at least not for the Carolina game. The second Philadelphia game, good game, 3-0 win. By the way, the 2 wins this week were actually back-to-back shutouts by our goaltenders in Jonas Corposalo, who played the Flyers game, and Jeremy Swayman, who actually in the Kraken game, wasn't challenged until, I would say, the third period, where they started to really force it on him. So he had a really good end to the game. But
I think tonight the Kraken. I think they finished the first period with I think
3
officially it was like 3 shots, but
3
really
shots.
it was 2. I mean, they kind of gave him that first one, but and that was with what, a couple minutes left,
Yeah,
and the
they did
Bruins held
not.
them shotless for
17
really
minutes.
long time.
17 minutes. It took the Kraken 17 minutes to get a shot on net, which is absolutely insane. It's a long time, dude. I'm sorry, it's a long time. Like, if you're the coach, if you're Dan Bylsma, I would have been livid. I would have been like, dude, I don't care how you get it done. Get it done. At least keep something honest. But the Bruins did a clinic on that. But we'll get to the Kraken in a split second, because I thought the Philadelphia game was what helped the Bruins play the Kraken the way they did tonight, because they must have built something off of that game. Because the way they played Philadelphia in the second game was significantly better. They came out swinging. They came out better. They came out heavier. They just played Bruins hockey, like you said.
It was a completely different team. Right from the puck drop, you could sense that intensity that everyone had. It seemed like a completely different, like a 180 from the Tuesday game.
Yep.
I mean, they wanted to be there. They wanted to win, and like I said, they wanted to prove it to, I think, themselves that's not them. That's not the team they're going to be, and going forward, that they're not going to play like that, or try not to play like that.
For sure. And I think the results showed. They emphasize getting pucks and bodies to the net. Look what happens. Look what happens, dude. Haven't we been saying that for weeks? Pucks, bodies to the net. Stop effing around and just shoot it. You have a lane, take it. Who cares? Like anyone who, when I was watching Carolina in the first Philadelphia game, what I was screaming was like, you are allergic to shooting on the power play unless your name is David Pasternak.
That's the whole power play. That's the whole power play.
They force fed him, and I'm like, just shoot it. If there's a rebound, he's gonna be there. He's a smart NHL player. He's going to be there. Marchand will be there. Elias Lindholm will be there. They're not stupid players. They're veteran players that have been there a while. They kind of get it, and they understand. They understand the assignment. They pass their homework in on time most of the time. Like, you know what I mean? Unlike you and I in college, we didn't pass in our homework ever.
Another overarching theme of the season so far is simplify the game.
But
they're trying to do too much, trying to make that perfect pass, trying to make that one extra pass, trying to. It's a sloppy breakout, sloppy, neutral zone possessions. It's simplify the game. Start playing simple hockey.
And they did that against Philadelphia, and I wouldn't call the Philadelphia game perfect, but it was something to build on, because I think that was a very solid team win.
Yeah.
So, and they just played well. They played better. I felt a little bit more comfortable. As Korpisalo had a phenomenal game. He absolutely robbed. I cannot. I think it was Konechny. I just can't remember who the hell. Or no, it was Hathaway. I think it was Hathaway. He robbed him off of it. And Hathaway should have had that goal. But my God, the way he moved across, phenomenal. He tracked the puck well. Korpisalo's best game as a Bruin, I think, was against Philadelphia. Awesome game by him. Spectacular. Just, I could go on and on about him during that game. Marchand finally showed up this week. He's finally stringing it together. He's had points. He's been on the board, but he hasn't been, that scoring forward that we've all known over the past decade plus, right? So we
might have mentioned it last week. Maybe that overtime goal against Toronto got the monkey off his back, and now he's back in it.
Yep.
He finally shook that unable to get going.
Yep. His playmaking ability has been awesome, and I mean, he showed it in the Philly game too. He had I believe it was 2 assists. No, he had a goal and an assist in the Philly game, if I'm not mistaken, and then he had an assist tonight against the Kraken. Off of Charlie Coyle's not overtime goal, power play goal, which was absolutely dirty. Oh my God, his hands were fucking soft.
Completely undressed the goal. He undressed
soft.
It was unbelievable.
Soft hands. But you see him starting to come out, and so I think they took that yesterday, which was a matinee game, which we've historically played poorly on. By the way, fuck matinee games, and which leads us to tonight, where Jeremy Swayman got the start. He needed to improve, I think, and to a degree. I'm not going to fault him entirely, because the team that plays in front of him is a bit of a mess. But God, did he also show up tonight in the third period when Seattle started to give their push. He made some phenomenal stops. He had to do a lot of kickouts. He had to put his blocker down. He did a lot. He got involved. He made the saves, and he stepped up when he absolutely needed to.
Which could be tough, too, in a game like that, where you're essentially pretty much sitting cold for almost 2 full periods.
Yeah. Yeah, like we said, so the Bruins started with, I think it was a goal within the first 4 minutes. They went on the power play and they got a goal after that. I mean, the Bruins won the game 2-0, but I mean the score did not reflect how dominant the Bruins were on the
Yeah,
Kraken
not at all.
5-on-5, just in all facets of the game. They swallowed the neutral zone. They jumped on, the attackers as soon as they crossed the blue line. They developed the layers perfectly, and they got so many shots to Decord over the first. I think the shots were, I think it was 30-10 at the end of two periods. So you're averaging 15 shots a period. That's a lot for a goaltender, especially if they're high danger chances and you're getting the goalie to move. He's going to get tired.
Yeah, he is the game for Seattle is how we felt earlier this week. Being on the other end of that, you're leaving the goalie out to dry. The team can't do anything, and honestly, from the Bruins' perspective, that's what makes games like last Tuesday or last Thursday against Carolina more frustrating because you see what they can do.
Mhm.
Granted, I don't think the Kraken are as good as the Hurricanes, but it just goes to show you when they play their style hockey and when they play their game, the impact that it has.
See, I think the Kraken are good on paper. I just think they've had Hackstall as a horrible coach, and I thought bringing in Dan Bylsma was going to help a lot, but I guess it didn't help as much as I thought. Maybe a guy like Quinn would come in and can help people. Some of their fans were asking for Joel Quenneville, who should never see NHL ice ever again after his debacle in Chicago. But weirder things have happened. Maybe Daryl Sutter, but he's ancient. But it honestly, if I was like the announcer, if I had to announce the three stars of the game, I mean, I would list Decord as number three. I'm not gonna lie to you. I mean, like the guy played stellar. I'm a huge Boston Bruins fan, but you got to give credit where credit's due. Decord played a hell of a game.
A prime example of the goalie can't do everything. He
Yep.
saw a lot of shots, he made a lot of good saves, but the team kinda left him out to dry, which worked in our favor, but
Yeah,
it's
and
gotta be
it was.
frustrating for a Seattle fan or
Uh,
for the team.
Oh, for sure. And Matty Beniers has not been what he needed to be, especially after signing the contract. I mean, there's been a couple players that need to step up, but McCann has been good for them. But, I think there's just a couple players like maybe they're figuring it out too. New coach, new system. So they're probably getting adjusted to that as well. So who knows? Maybe they pick it up in the latter half of the year. I mean, they're not a terrible team, I don't think, but they do love the older defensemen. So we're going to see. And Decord's a good backup goalie. Or I think he's splitting time with their other goaltender right now. His name escapes me. Um,
You wanna get into that, we mentioned that the game was 2-0, but do you wanna get into that call that briefly it was 3-0, but it ended up getting called back?
yeah, so Pavel Zacha was thought to give the Bruins a 3-0 lead. I believe it was in the first period, if I'm not mistaken, and it looked as though, like, based upon what certain people understand the rule of, like, possession and control, right? So he made a pass off of his stick going into the zone that would make it appear as though he did not have possession and or control of the puck. And so that's exactly how they ruled it. So, and that was the explanation by the NHL rules analyst, that the fact that he went for the pass and did not wait till he crossed the blue line to pass it was why they believed he did not have possession nor control. I see the point. I don't know if I 100% agree with it because you have to assume they know that what they were doing.
If he was 2 inches forward, that wouldn't have been a question. But
Yep.
it was a behind the back pass, and right away, at least maybe I'm in the minority. I thought as soon as they showed that replay, the first replay they showed, yeah, he's going back, and his obviously he's already in the zone. It's behind the back pass, but once he lets go of that puck, you give up control. And I think
Yep.
Brickley on the broadcast was saying, it's still right there. He's obviously it's a pass, it's intended, so there's no one else around. He's still is in control of it. At least to me, as soon as that puck gets off your stick for a pass, you're giving up control. And that the blue when you're going into the offensive zone, that the edge of the blue line that's touching the offensive zone is still part of the neutral zone
Or the off
until that.
well, it's part of whichever zone the puck is coming from.
So in that case, the
In
neutral
that
zone
case, the neutral zone.
going into the Bruins offensive zone, so the Seattle defensive zone. So in that case, I thought they expected it to be a pretty quick review about it being about the goal standing, but
And it
I
was.
disagreed right away because, and again, I'm talking like very basic hockey rules, and I know that there's different rules about possession and stuff, but to me, as soon as that puck leaves your stick for a pass, you're giving up control. You no longer have control of that puck. You no longer have possession.
I don't disagree with you because once the NHL rules analyst kind of like went on and explained it, and at first I did agree with Brickley. I'm like, Brickley has a good point, but I'm just like, but you know, what is possession? And I never got the chance to kind of fact check Brickley um, regarding that. So I just kind of, formulated my own thoughts and opinions on it. I'm like, well, you could adjust the rule. You could make it a little bit more specific, a little bit tighter. I'm like, you know what? No, just it's fine. Like I like the explanation that was provided to me. It was off of his stick at the time. He was in the zone. I'm like, you know what? That's fine. I'll take that. So, but you know, that's going to be called differently in another game. That might be called a good goal. I'm kind of willing to accept that, and at the end of the season, if they need to review it at the GM and ownership meetings, go ahead, review it, and maybe make it a little bit tighter. But I thought they already did a good job of doing the offside rule, but instead of like your feet having to be on the blue line, now it just has to be on the plane of the blue line. So I think there's not much more that they need to add to it. Um, I was impartial to it, but after listening more, I agree that it was no goal. I agree with you 100%.
The most frustrating part about that is, like I said, if you're 2 inches forward, that's not even a question.
Well, you
And
can
when they
also ask.
challenged it for offsides, I figured it was one of those things where it's like, okay, how long's the puck been in the zone? How long's it been? Like, are we going to bring this back? 4 minutes? Because I mean, obviously
Yeah,
not. But
I get. Well, Alex
that
brings
rule
that up
drives me
too.
crazy.
Well, so here's the thing. We have I believe we have a sin bin on that about offsides versus not, or like things in coaches' reviews, and I'm just like, and he just used to say, well, if it's off by a tit hair, and I'm just like, it doesn't matter, it's offside. Like I get it, it's frustrating, but you're right. If you're already in the zone for 2 minutes or a minute 45, that's really not the case. Normally, goals like that happen within the first 15 seconds, right? Most of the time, because
But
then you can clearly
but
tell.
it's happened before where they've had to
Sure.
put a pretty extensive amount of time back on the board.
Yeah, and
And like
that
you
does
said,
irritate
offsides is
fans.
offsides. Make the
Mhm.
call originally. You got to make the right call. But that's something that I don't know. It's probably never going to change because
Or you
hockey
could
is
fix it by leaving, like, put a camera at the blue line and just let Toronto decide it. Like,
yeah.
have them blow the horn. If that's going to be the case, if you're going to make that much of a judgment call on an offsides, have Toronto do it.
I don't
I
hate that.
really don't think there's much more that they need to do with the offsides, though. I really don't. I think what I think it's fine the way it is. If you challenge it, whatever, I don't really care. It's offside. It's offside. It aggravates people, but
Yeah,
I don't
the
know.
Zach
I
the
don't
Zach
really
pass
see.
was a weird situation too. I mean,
Yeah,
how many times is that
yeah.
realistically going to happen?
And most oftentimes, coaches only challenge it to keep their teams in the game. If the game's already far gone, they're not going to care.
Yeah,
Most, like, you know what I mean. If it's already 7-2, that eighth goal, it's not gonna change the game,
yeah,
especially with the last 4 minutes of a period. They're just gonna let it go.
yeah.
Maybe, especially if it's close, because they're not gonna risk going down a penalty. Um, and what have you. Yeah, that it didn't bother me I'm that much as I thought it would, but especially since the game was very dominant by Boston. I mean, Elias Lindholm was noticed. I can't tell you a Bruins player who wasn't noticeable tonight against Seattle. Kepke, Beecher, Kostelik, all their names were mentioned. Yeah, mentioned. Frederick, Patra, Geeky. Like,
Oh, I made a note of this to ask you. Why did Frederick get an extra 2 minutes
no idea.
on that
I
for
I
sportsmanlike?
I feel like it was because Larson did not drop the gloves. I
Because
feel
he's a
like
coward and just
yeah,
turned his back?
he's a bit of a vagina. But like he I feel like I can see where they got the 2 minute on Sportsmanlike because Frederick jumped him. He did. And I don't think Frederick gave him the opportunity to consent to the fight or anything like that. And Frederick just started wailing on him. It was a good response, a good penalty to take. I was okay with it because of the way he hit. It was a legal hit on Patra.
I
Anyone
thought it
saying
was
he
a good
wasn't?
I thought it was just a good hit. It was a good hard
Yeah.
hit, and you see that everywhere. As soon as there's a
Yep.
big hit or a hard hit, someone else has to get involved.
Well,
And
especially if you
I was
think that
shocked that he got called for that extra unsportsmanlike.
Well, especially if you think that, like, he was hit too hard, and if his head was down, you want to protect your players, you want to show, or you want to protect your teammates, and you want to show that you care about them, and X, Y, and Z. So I think the response was warranted by Frederick. The 2 minute penalty, I'm sure Montgomery was willing to take. In a 2-0 game, though, you got to be careful. But I'm not gonna fault Frederick for what he did. Do I think Larson should have owned up and just like fought him? Because as hard of a hit it was, I wouldn't call it dirty, but like you hit a guy with his head down, so you got to answer for it, I think. But again, they were down 2-0, so not doing that, not gonna hate him.
Yeah.
You know
I
what
mean,
I mean?
I'm on the same page as you. I was just there was really no explanation as to why, and I was just curious as to what you thought. And
That'd be my best guess.
yeah.
Is that it was because of the way he jumped him and just I mean he did. He started punching him like all the way through. Like you know what I mean? Was no effort. And I think that was because yesterday anytime Frederick tried to get in with somebody, I think it was Konechny, the refs were not letting anything go. They were
Yeah,
not letting
Connector's
anybody
a
fight.
rat too. I hate
So
that.
he is. He's a little yeah,
Jeez.
he is. He's a little wine baby. He's a little word that I don't want to say on a podcast at the current moment. Um but yeah, I think that's probably why Frederick was so quick to kind of jump to it and get a few punches in before the refs could got to get in there and
Yeah.
break that up. Um, yeah. So
Which I guess is fair.
there's that. Yeah, yeah. Those are my
Luckily,
thoughts
it
on it.
didn't
I
matter.
thought it
Like,
was
I
fair.
mean, luckily the Zaka pass, the we didn't need that third goal. We didn't give anything up on that the extra 2 minutes from Frederick.
Mhm.
So,
Yeah,
I mean, all in all, I guess it kind of worked out.
yeah. I mean, yeah, yeah, that too. And I mean, to wrap up the week, I mean, it was a 500 week, not enough. But and I'm gonna say this before we get into like the big bad Bruin and the bear down in the week ahead. But 500 is not enough. But seeing how they built off the last two games, if they can continue to do that, because what I'm looking for at this point is consistency. Because they just showed you over the last two games what everyone was expecting this team to be.
You
But
got to keep that intensity. You got to keep
yep,
building on that. And
yep,
obviously, if
and
they're going to, it's not going to be positives every game from here. There's going to be down games, but again, they showed you what happens when they play their game. They showed you that they could be a dominant team. They showed you that they can work the puck and not just try to feed it to one person as an entire offensive strategy. So not seeing that in the future when you know it's doable.
Coyle getting on the board tonight was a perfect example. I mean, it wasn't David Pastrnak. I mean, look what happens. Other people on this team can effing score. Imagine what a concept.
And
Like, you know
honestly,
what I
later
mean?
in the game in the third period, I think it was in the same play. Marchand didn't whiff on a wraparound, but he just shot it straight across the crease. There was another in the same play, another I forget who it was, another opportunity to score, and they couldn't put it away. Luckily, we didn't need it, but it would have helped too.
Real quick, David Pastrnak did not have a shift in the third period.
He did not.
And it was not because he was playing poorly. He had 7 shots, I believe, through 2 periods, which is pretty solid for him, right? Like, that's pretty good. None of them went in the back of the net, but that's okay. Like, you can't score on every shot and you're not going to score every game. And I don't expect that out of David Pastrnak. But I thought it was a little concerning. But he wasn't down the tunnel. He was on the bench. It seemed like he might have had something nagging. I wonder if it's that hip
I
issue that
did
he's had over the
see
last year.
I
Because
did
I
see
did see
on
him skate.
Twitter people either at the game, I'm assuming at the game, people were saying in between whistles and during commercial breaks, he was on the ice skating, almost looking like it might have been a groin thing that was bothering him, kind of trying to get loose and stretch that area. So he was skating in between whistles, and we might not have seen it on TV, but commercial breaks and whenever he had a chance, he would step on the ice, take a few steps, try to stretch that out. So then I believe too that Montgomery before the game said there was a few guys that were going to be game time decisions, and I'm wondering if
Oh, he's probably one of them.
that
He
was
was
one of
probably.
them.
I bet you he was one of them. And I mean, it's a lot. They played a lot of hockey thus far in like a couple. I mean, 13 games. I mean, and you're traveling a lot. They've traveled a lot too. You got to take that into consideration. That's going to put some miles on your body. And so they have, they're traveling to Toronto. It's not that far, but I'd imagine that the trainers are going to take a look at him, and I think Montgomery noticed that, like, hey, we're playing well without you right now. Stay on the bench and feel it out. But if we don't have to play you, we're not going to play you. So, and I think that's where Montgomery does right. If he recognizes a situation and he can double shift guys otherwise.
Yeah. When I saw that he was still on the bench, still trying to stay loose, get on the ice when he could, stretch that. Again, I don't know if it was a hip or a groin or what. It seemed like he was staying on the bench. It was his call, or I guess it could have been him or the coach's call that it's a 2-0 game. We're playing pretty dominant. We're really in control of this game. But just in case something happens, stay here, stay loose, be ready to go if we need you.
Right, and I think it was a smart play.
Yeah.
So we'll see. All right, ladies and gentlemen, that takes us to the Big Bad Bruin, which is our player of the week. I was between two for me.
We got.
I went with Brad Marchand. I think finally seeing him have his name said several times was good. I felt he was more noticeable, and he got more and more noticeable as the week went on. He had 4 points this week, so that was basically he averaged a point a game. Taking into the average, not what he actually did. He had 2 points against the second game against Philadelphia, a point tonight, and a point against Carolina. Carolina was not the best game, but I think that aside, I think he is starting to kind of come out of hibernation a bit. And, that was a good plug, right? It seems like he's starting to get his rhythm back, and I think he took that loss to Carolina very personally. I think you're starting to see the leadership qualities come out. It definitely showed in Philadelphia at the Wells Fargo Center, and it sure showed tonight against Seattle. So I got to give Marchand some credit because I think he finally took the captain's reins and reeled everybody in.
That is a good pick. I went a little bit different, and we touched on it before. Someone who I don't think is going to get a lot of much praise as he's going to this week. I'm going to go Korpisalo. He played both Flyers games. He came in late in a really, really tough Carolina game with a team that's already down and out, already struggling. That Saturday game, we touched on it before, his best game of the year, his best game as a Bruin. He was, I think, he was unbelievable. He had a shutout in that game. The Carolina game, he did give up 2 goals, but he had 13 saves. He had an .867 save percentage, and the 2-0 loss against Philadelphia, he had 17 saves and posted a .944. So for the week, he had a .937 save percentage on a really tough week for the team. Everyone was kind of down and out. Energy was low. The games weren't that great. And for all of his action that he saw this week, I think that's pretty fucking good.
Yeah, he was the guy that was my second option. Actually, he was leading my Big Bad Bruin up until I started seeing more out of Marchand. And the only reason I think what set Marchand above Corp for me was we needed him to step up. And so I think that's why I wanted to give him that recognition, say like he is stepping up when he needed to. The team's back at 500. Like I said, it's not enough, especially with the way that team is built. It's a lot better. And I think seeing his leadership in tandem with Montgomery, I think at this point, and a lot of people are blaming him, and I can agree to an extent, but you're starting to see them maybe work together more and understand where everything needs to go. They had a players meeting, and it seems like everything is starting to take form, and he's starting to take the locker room back into control. But it's not to discredit Korpisalo's play this week at all.
I thought he was fantastic this week.
Absolutely. You're not going to get an argument out of me. The bear down, the guy who needs to step up. This, I feel before we do this every week, I don't think there's been a consistent guy on all of our lists per week, which I think is good in a sense, because then that means someone's stepping up and then someone like maybe regresses um, a little bit. But I've noticed more so that they're either on the middle pairing defensive pairs or the bottom or the middle six in the forward group, and I don't think today might be any different. So who do you have?
First and foremost, this is our fourth or fifth episode since the season has started, and we have introduced these two segments. I would like to propose going forward, and it just came into my mind. We really should flip flop. We should get this one out of the way first, and then get in, and then
End
end
with the
on a pause.
positive.
And
Yeah,
then we're
end with
like,
the
"Hey,
positive.
this guy was awesome. He had a great week, but this
And then
guy
instead of like, yeah, this guy is awesome. This guy sucks.
yeah."
As
And
opposed
then
to
here's next
this guy
week.
sucks, but this guy is awesome.
So
Yeah,
just
no, that's a good. We might flip it.
we'll put a pin in that.
We'll talk to
The bear
Higgy.
down player, for the player that I think that needs to step up, not only over this past week, maybe it was more noticeable over this past week due to the frustration. Matthew Poitras.
Yeah, my seventh player pick.
Matthew Poitras.
Yeah.
He has one goal that came Saturday over this past 11. This was game 11 or 12, whatever it is, and he has 3 total points on the season so far.
Yeah, that doesn't surprise me as a third liner because that's where they're playing him right now.
No, I'm not saying again. He's jumped up on a second line wing, I believe. He's playing third line center, but the start that he had last year, and I know that he got hurt, but in the offseason he worked. That he came back to camp, 10 pounds heavier. He built muscle, and everyone was really hyping him up. You could, I mean, and again, you could say this for a lot of guys. You could say another guy I had up for a close second was Charlie Coyle, but after that goal against Seattle, I took him off the board right away just because that goal was so awesome.
He had a good game yesterday too. Like I think he had a good 2 games. You know what I mean? I feel like he's for the middle six. They've messed up those lines so much. It's hard to kind of to fault them because it's difficult for them to build chemistry. And that's what irks me about Montgomery. But I agree with you with Patra. Patra is a good one. I
Yeah,
mean, he's not my pick, but
yeah, I think at this point in the season, and again, he's not going to be putting up David Pastrnak numbers. He's not going to be expected to play like Brad Marchand, any of your superstar guys. But
yeah,
this is really his what how many games into the season last year did he get hurt?
I can't remember off the top of my head.
It was pretty early though, right?
I think January.
And it's was it January?
I think it was December or January he went down.
It just seems like the way that people talk about him and the way that people expect him to play, you would expect more than 3 points and getting your first goal this past Saturday against Philly.
Well, look at it this way. He's in his sophomore year. You got to expect a little bit of a learning curve. The kid's only 20 years old. You know what I mean? And I think he was still a steal in the second round. I still think he's going to develop into this amazing player. I mean, if you look at the leadership that he has around him in the form of Elias Lindholm, Brad Marchand and a couple other big guys and some solid centers around him. Bergeron is still around the team here and there. Just the lineage that team has is great. Actually, unless the Bruins improved over this last week, I was actually going to say to shake things up, you need to remove some letters from people. I was willing to remove the A's from McAvoy, and I was willing to remove the A from Pastrnak if the Bruins were going to go 0-4 this week or even 1-3. You needed to shake something up.
If the Bruins went 0-4 this week, we are had this episode and this conversation we're having is exponentially different.
There would have been a lot of 4-letter words that I still would have mispronounced. So so that's it. No, I 100% agree. I think Patra is one of the guys that needs to do a little bit better. I wouldn't say he needs to be a lot better. He's been noticeable, but not enough. I think he needs to start using his speed and not worry so much about his weight and body because he doesn't have that weight yet to flaunt around. I think he needs to rely more on his speed and his shooting ability and his hands. The guy has fast hands. For me, it's Morgan Geekie. Same story, different day. He has the skill, he has the talent, and I think if Montgomery just keeps the lines the way they are, not a huge fan of Justin Brazeau on the second line, but it's working.
Or the power play.
Or the power play. Well, no, here's the thing. You can put him on the power play, but just shoot the fucking puck if he's screening the net. Don't just I don't know what if you
If
have a
he's out
guy.
there,
Yeah,
that's all he's good for.
great. You're gonna get me going on a rant, but um,
Fuck you.
um, yeah, it's Morgan Geeky. I just need to see him perform. You know he can. We know he can. He did it last year. He had a career year last year. And it was virtually with the same teammates. So figure it out. Skate, use your legs, shoot the puck. Don't overthink it. If the Bruins continue to play like they did the past 2 games, I feel like he'll find his game. He's gonna find the back of the net, and I think that's all that's gonna take for him. And just simplify your game, dude. And I mean, look at the results. The past 2 games showed what happened when you simplify the game. You win games that way.
Yeah, and then that's somebody that we've mentioned before. The coaching staff has made note of it and made comments on that. That if he wants to stay on this team, he's gotta be better. So hopefully we see that soon too. I was big. I was high on Geeky coming into this year.
So was I. I thought last year that was a sneaky pickup, but I'm sorry. If I'm going to say this, the Bruins management making threats about if you want to stay on this team and play every night. I'd be careful with making those threats because then your other option is Max Jones
Or Fabian Lysell, your boy.
or Fabian Lysell if they ever decide to give
Your
him a call
boy
up.
that you will
Never going to
not let
happen.
go of.
I won't because he is a speedy guy who can shoot. The Bruins also need another person like that. I will leave it at that, and I guarantee you will miss that come the playoffs when you play against the Florida Panthers. You will miss it. Just all I'm saying.
It's your boy, dude. You will not let that go.
I won't. I will die on that hill. I will die on that hill. Trade him. If you're not going to use him, trade him. That's all I'm going to say. Give me Shane Wright. Put him on the second line right wing. I don't care. He's a bum. He's looking like he's going to be a bust, but screw it. I'm going to take a page out of Jamey's book with the Philadelphia Flyers. I'm going to turn the Bruins into the biggest NHL prostitute. We'll take anybody for anything you want. Don't care because we're going to reinvigorate people's careers. Jamey, by the way, wants Matt Rempe. No, thank you.
With that, we have. First of all, I want to make note that during episode 17, our last episode, we did our look ahead and we left out the Seattle game, which me and Cam both off the record predicted as a win. So when we go back and tally up these wins, the record for predictions, we got to leave that in there. We'll make a note of it somewhere. This week we have another Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday week. Tuesday, the 5th, the Bruins will travel to Toronto for a 7 p.m. puck drop. Thursday, the 7th, they come back home on Causeway. Calgary is in town for another 7 o'clock puck drop. And Saturday, I think it's a 7 o'clock game. I think it's all 7 o'clock games.
So.
The Senators come to Boston for the first return of Linus Ullmark since his departure from the Bruins.
It's going to be a good game. I'm going to really like
It's going to be
one.
a good game. Personally, I think that the Toronto game is going to be a win. I think that the game last week against Toronto set the tone for how this year is going to go against that team. It's going to be a battle. Hopefully they go back and forth. Hopefully they're pretty close in the standings because Toronto's no shitbag team. They're a pretty solid team, as much as it pains me to say that.
Yeah, but they're struggling just as much.
That's what I'm saying. Hopefully it's a back and forth. I have that as a win. Calgary in Boston, I have that as a win. And then Ottawa in Boston on Saturday, I have that as a loss, which was tough because Ottawa is also not good. But I have respect for Ullmark, assuming he's going to play that game. I think that he's going to come to play.
I'll start with Toronto. That's hard because it's in Toronto. And yes, the Bruins have had Toronto's number. It might depend on who starts in net for that game. I feel like if it's Jonas Korpisalo, which I have a feeling it might be.
No way.
I have a feeling it might be because he has yet to see the Leafs yet this year. And I think we only play each other 3 times. So he's going to see them at least once.
Do we only get them 3 times?
I think we only get them 3 times. I'm not 100% positive on that, so don't quote me. But You know he's going
Yep.
to see them at least once, and I'm wondering if they're going to let him see them on Tuesday. If that's the case, I'm actually going to give it a loss. If Swayman is in net, because Swayman has owned them, I'm going to give it a win. So unfortunately for me, I'm going to have to go on a goaltender scenario for my win-loss here. Um, in terms of Calgary, they had a good start to the season. Um, uh, Wolf is a phenomenal goalie. I think he's going to be something. The only unfortunate side is that it's Calgary. And their team is not as deep. They've lost a lot of pieces, especially in that trade when they got Jonathan Huberdeau and Mackenzie Weegar in return for Matt Tkachuk, which is probably the worst effing trade I've ever seen in my tenure of watching hockey. But I think that's going to be a win, irrespective of who's in net. I do anticipate Korpisalo getting one of the 3 starts. I don't think Swayman's going to start all 3. And then the game against Ottawa. I think you're right. That's going to be difficult. They have a high flying offense. Olmark's going to be in net. I guarantee you that he will return to Boston in net. And I believe they will play Swayman against him. I think that will just because I think at the end of the game, no matter who wins or loses, you're going to see them meet at the center of the ice. That's what I think they're anticipating.
That was
And
my next question. Do you think there's going to
yep,
be a goalie hug after that game, win or lose?
I think irrespective of who wins or loses, I think it'll be Swayman versus Olmark, which is why I think Korpisalo will be getting the start in Toronto. So I'm going to say loss, win, win, because I just don't think Ottawa defensively will be able to snuff out the Bruins,
I respect that.
I don't think Olmark alone can save them. And I do have a ton of respect for Olmark, but
Yeah, I think he's going to come to. I think he's going to come ready to play. Not with any ill will. I just think that he's going
nope.
to come
And
back.
he waived his clause to go to Ottawa. I think there's nothing bad there. I think he knew it was coming, and I think there's a ton of respect between him and the Boston organization. And I think you'll definitely see that on the ice with all the guys. So, I think that'll be good. Ladies and gentlemen, that's gonna do it. I'm gonna throw it over to Vogel, who's gonna take us out.
Like Cam said, ladies and gentlemen, that will do it for HiBruiNation episode 18. Please don't forget to like, comment, subscribe on this video here. If you're listening on Spotify or Apple, thank you. We appreciate everyone who listens or watches this so much. Please don't forget to check out our website, HiBruiNation.com. We have daily blogs up for you. We have game previews, game recaps. We have so much planned and in the works that will be coming soon to HiBruiNation.com. Also on HiBruiNation.com are all of the podcasts associated with Don't Puck with Media. As well as, you know what? It's probably a good time to plug this too. Also, don't go check out don'tpuckwithmedia.com. That's also a new website we have out. That will be even more content, which is league wide, not just specific to the Bruins, but league wide. Another great site that we're going to have so much content for you guys. We are always ready to receive fan mail, hate mail, voice messages, anything you guys have for a chance to be played on the show or read aloud on the show, where we can answer your questions, listen to your comments. If you have any frustration or ranting you want to get out, let us have it. Next week, Kyle will be back. He has been on vacation for the past week or so. So all the boys will be back for the next episode. And as always, we love you guys. We love you guys so much. Thank you for the support. Please share as much as you can. And until next time, go Bruins.